What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Pokémon moves can be a complicated topic, with almost as many attacks as there are pocket monsters, but they all have their own power levels and accuracies and can be used a different number of times, not to mention the extra effects that they can take on. But perhaps most famously, the intricacies of Pokémon attacks can be seen by their contradictions. Especially in the early days, we saw frankly absurd omissions, such as Lickitung not learning Lick, or Growlithe not learning Growl, despite having those words in their names. So someone seriously neglected to think through that predicament. But those are far from the only attacks missing on Pokémon that should have them, with this problem lasting throughout Pokémon's lifetime. For instance, take the Steel-type move Smart Strike. It's described as the Pokémon stabbing the foe with sharp horns, so it sounds like a simple metal variant of horn attack. But this one has higher power and never misses, so that's a pretty great improvement. However, despite its straightforward premise, Smart Strike is a lot more restrictive and leaves out Pokémon that you would really expect, like Berserker, who is a Steel type with prominent horns, who would have been perfect for this attack. But, no, we gotta give it to Fortress instead, who has no horns. Perhaps even more bizarrely, we see Iron Boulder overlooked, which you may not think is a big deal, but number one, it's got giant horns with iron right in the name, so you would really think that would be good enough to fit. Number two, the other Paradox forms of the Musketeers get it, so lacking the actual Steel type isn't the problem. And number three, we see the regular Terrakion does get Smart Strike. So this one seems almost spiteful for its exclusion of Iron Boulder here. Of course, there are other clashes with words in not just the names of Pokémon, but the often forgotten categories as well. Like how Zangoose is known as the cat-ferret Pokémon, yet it doesn't actually learn any cat-based attacks. But I bring this up to talk about Garchomp. While Gible might be the land shark Pokémon, the final evolution is known as the Mach Pokémon because of just how fast it can fly through the air. That being said, why can it not learn Mach Punch? This is not exclusively on fighting-type Pokémon, or even all that fast Pokémon, so one that can move at the speed of sound should definitely be able to get off a priority hit. It's probably because it's got Punch in the name and Garchomp has Claws instead, but I'm not sure that forming a physical fist is the most important aspect of this attack. It's more of the incredible speed at which it's launched. It doesn't seem any more out of place than Primeape learning Iron Tail after all, but maybe there's a balancing issue I'm not aware of, and giving Garchomp that kind of priority would be broken. I don't know. Another category is Masquerain being the eyeball Pokémon, which makes sense, but then why can't it learn many of the eye-based moves, such as Mean Look, for example? I mean, Glare is mainly for snake Pokémon, so I get why a bug might be excluded there, but if your excuse is that they're not eyes and instead antenna, then you clearly weren't listening because it's the eyeball Pokémon. I mean, the Pokédex wouldn't lie to me, right? But also, it does get Scary Face. So a scary face and a mean look don't seem all that different to me. But hey, maybe that one's a stretch. So what about the inexcusable case of Simisear, the Ember Pokémon, being unable to learn the move Ember? Not sure how that one made it past the creators. I mean, Ember got the message, and that line can learn the move. But the Ember Pokémon completely lacking the attack is not only unfitting, but its pre-evolution Pansear really needs to have access to more fire attacks, since it only gets 3 of them throughout its entire level-up moveset. So this doesn't fit in theme or practice, but I guess that's just another insult to the quote-unquote least popular Pokémon of all time. There are some other oddities that make you scratch your head, like Branch Poke being so narrow in focus, despite other Pokémon being made of wood. Like, I think Shiftry could pretty easily get it, but then again, it's such a weak move that it hardly matters. One that's far more consequential is Bolt Beak. This is the signature attack of the Electric-type Galar fossils, which has the Pokémon jab the opponent with their electrified beak. And it's a great move with high power and gets boosted even higher if you go first. So then it may be a bit much to have this attack on the speedier Zapdos, but you can't tell me that it wouldn't be a perfect fit. This legend has an even more pronounced beak, and has the appropriate electrical disposition to match, in either form that it can take, by the way, so are we really expected to believe that Zapdos shouldn't have access to this attack? I guess they saw this controversy coming and just decided that it was easier to remove Bolt Beak from the game in Gen 9, but it will come back at some point, so can we please give it to Zapdos when that happens, although it might be a bit harder for Fishious Wren to see wider distribution to match. But while we're on legendary Pokemon, I have never really understood why Suicune can't access the move Purify. This little trick is currently exclusive to Pyukumuku, and it can heal the foe of status conditions while regaining health. So that description and the name Purify makes it painfully obvious that this is something that Suicune should absolutely be able to do. It's stated as such in the Pokédex, running around the world purifying filthy water. So this is textbook Suicune, the same way that Vaporeon's description went hand in hand with Acid Armor. So I don't think anyone would mind if they gave this legendary beast access to the one thing that it's supposed to do. Especially since it is a legendary, so Pyukumuku wouldn't even be that undercut since it's far more common. But as for even more legends, you know what really grinds my gears? Gear Grind, and the fact that Magearna doesn't get it somehow. It clearly has the word gear right in the name, and it also has access to the move Shift Gear, so it apparently has no trouble with gear-related activities. There's really no reason that a mythical of all things can't do everything that a random Clink can do, and more. If it's supposed to be because the gears are locked away inside Magearna, it has the capability of opening up certain sections of its mechanical body. And with the Soul Heart, it's not as if it couldn't sustain itself without the gears for at least a little bit, I think, maybe? Or who's to say that it doesn't have some spare gears lying around? I mean, that's more believable than Lucario carrying around extra bones to rush people with. So I see no issues with a gear-based Pokemon using gear-based attacks, when it has already displayed that capability before. But if nothing else, could we please see Gear Grind on something like the Varoom line or other Pokemon that are clearly mechanical? But then there are some attacks that only seem off on the surface, like say Drill Peck not being allowed on drill-related Pokemon, especially when Nidoran gets regular Peck, so why could its final form not have the drill version of that? Well, when you look at the Japanese name, the attack is actually called Drill Beak, which explains why only bird Pokemon seem to get it. However, that same logic does not save the move Egg Bomb. This attack has been around since Gen 1 for the Chansey and Execute lines. It's not nearly as awful as Barrage, it has much better power but worse accuracy, and no one would question those Pokemon having Egg Bomb, of course, but there are some notable exceptions like the Togepi line. While not officially the Egg Pokemon, for some reason it's the Spike Ball instead, it's still very obviously encased in an egg, keeping the shell on for the duration of its life. So why would Egg Bomb be off limits? I could get maybe restricting it from the later evolutions because they lose the eggshell, but they still have the patterns on there, so arguably they have become one with the egg, and should therefore still be able to hurl eggs with the best of them. And, you know, if you want to get technical, Exeggutor doesn't even have eggs either, those are supposed to be coconuts. Yet it still gets to keep the attack, so nobody would really make a huge fuss if Togekiss stayed in touch with its humble roots as an egg by being able to use such moves. I could see maybe other Pokemon getting access to Egg Bomb at some point, but Togepi really is a strange omission, especially since it used to be able to learn Soft Boiled at some point. But even that was taken away too eventually. You could honestly make a case that Synchronoise is one of the worst attacks in the entire game, but perhaps it might not be so bad if it were on a lot more Pokemon. Not that it doesn't have a fair spread, because this psychic move is almost on as many non-psychic Pokemon, but Synchronoise has the unique functionality of damaging only targets that share the type of the user, which effectively makes the other 16 to 17 types totally immune. So the best way to make it less of a joke would be to at least give it to sound-related Pokemon. It would be nice to have a Noivern be able to blast out a 120 base power attack that's not resisted by either of its types. Or even better would be Toxtricity having a strong psychic attack to take out other poison types. However, I guess the problem is that it wouldn't be boosted by its punk rock ability, because for some reason, Synchronoise is not considered a sound-based attack, even though the Japanese name also contains the word noise. So there's really no rhyme or reason as to why Synchronoise has been so continually dismissed, because it could still be made of sound and incredibly narrow in type effectiveness. I don't see why they couldn't, but I guess it doesn't even matter, because to cap it all off, you can't even use it in the modern games anyway. So they must have been incredibly embarrassed about this move for a litany of reasons, and I really can't blame them. But of course, there are so many other discrepancies with Pokemon attacks being missing from obvious selections. Like the move Make It Rain isn't even on any water-type Pokemon. Care to explain that one, Game Freak? But what Pokemon attacks do you think are the most outrageously missing? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!